Hi, welcome to another episode of the NEATApp. In the last episode, we have shown you, in the last episode, what we have done is we've shown you how to implement the get keyboard summary. So this is the method that we have that we have implemented. In this episode, what we're going to do is we will be implementing the get. So the difference between these two, this method is that uh, this particular resource returns a list of all the particular keyboard belonging to a user like user Fred, whereas this particular resource retrieves one keyboard. So like something like this, right? So you say, this is the name of the user, and this is the board ID. Okay, so this is what we'll be implementing this in this episode. So let's begin. Once again, I will create a branch. Let's say, oops, 21. Okay, just look at part 21. Okay, so now we will go into again, and we will now open oops, our source. Okay, and now so this is what we have done last week. So we will now generate a controller. Instead of calling it kboards, we will call it kboards with the plural, with the s returns a list. So for this particular resource, we will call it kboard, since we're returning one. I will use the nest CLI again, generate controllers. We're going to have flag, and we're not going to generate any text. So, okay, so we have generated that. Let's go back here and have a look. Okay, so we've got a keyboard, and that is registered in here. Okay, and we can now have a look at this guy here. What we want to do is this: we want a resource. We want the resource to be rooted under kboard, and then we want to have the name and the board ID as variables, as dynamic. Okay. So we have kboard, and we put the user ID here. Okay, and we're going to do a get. So just say get, and then what we'll do is this: we'll say board ID, right? And we'll use an async method, and then we'll say get kboard, and then we'll return. We just return a string first. Okay. Okay. So now we need to capture this, as we have seen in last week. We use the param annotation. And the value of that gets injected into our method. I'll call it user ID again. The type is string. And then I'll define another method, param. And then this is going to be board ID. And then the type is also going to be string. We'll just test it by just returning the two values. User ID. And then we say board ID. Right. So now let's start the server. Okay. We go node mon. So notice that we have already got two resources, right? Two controllers. One is kboard, and the other is kboards with a user ID. And under kboards, we've got one resource, okay, or one sub resource rather. And then under kboard /user ID, we've got one more sub resource. and the method is get. So let's try calling that. Let's try referencing that resource. APPT. I'll just say thread and then ABCD, the board ID 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you do it correctly, we should get that. Okay, so we can call it like 1, 2, 3, and then we'll get that as well. And then we can try here. Let's put Barney. Okay, so that's working. So the first part is done. Now the second part we will do is as last week we will create an interface for the database. In persistence, so it's going to be fairly it's going to be the same as kboard. Just call kboard without the s, user ID, and then we're going to say the board ID of type string, and it's going to return a kboard, like so. Okay, so since our persistence service implements the kboard database, we now need to add that method here. Kboard, right, and it will return kboard. Okay, I'll just put a placeholder here. I'll just return a null first. Okay, and the type for these two is string. Oops. And string. Okay, so now let's figure out the SQL to return our data. So the data that we're going to return is this information here. So what we will do is this: I will log into I'll use the my CLI shell, which is a sort of enhanced version of the MySQL shell. The user that we're using so far is Barney, and the password is Barney. Okay, I'm going to say use stack. Okay, and then I'll select all from kboard. Okay, and select all from. So oops. Actually, I've been going through the data. I noticed that I've actually missed out one case. I've got here two boards. Each of them, have cards. Okay, but what I don't have is I don't have a board without card. So now I'm just going to add another additional board with card. Okay, so what I will do is this: I will add the data here so we can see all cases. I'll add the data here. Okay, let me change this the board ID. Let's call it WXYZ, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll call this my third board, HIRD, my third board. Right. So what I'll do is this: I will run this thing again. To do that, what I'll do is I'll just delete from user, where user ID is equals to thread. Okay. Right. So now I will source my data again. Okay. So let's have a look at our fields again. So I've got three cards. I've got three board, and then the card should be like this, right? So the first two card, the board card, the board with board ID ABC 1, 2, 3, 4 and ABCD 5, 6, 7, 8. Both of them have card, but the last one WXYZ 1, 2, 3, 4 doesn't have any card. Okay. So what we're going to do is this: we are now going to create a SQL to return this data. Okay, so we will test it. I'm just going to create a little file here. Let me call this test. And what I want to do is this, it's going to be the same as view. Essentially, it's going to be the same as our, it's going to be same as this. It's going to be a join. Okay, so this is what we do. Select all from kboard B. We're going to join that with kcut C, and then we're going to specify the condition of the join. The board ID equals to C board ID, and then we're going to say we're not going to return all the boards. We want to return one board for one particular user, and the condition is where board user ID is equals to, let's say, Fred, and board B dot board ID is equals to, let's say, A B C D 1 2 3 4. Okay, so we're going to try to retrieve this board A B C D, right? So we'll go source data SQL. Let's see. Oh, okay, sorry. I shouldn't be running source. I should be running source test. Right. So notice that we've got all the information belonging just to the first board. Let's try something different. Let's try this one. 5 6 7 8. Okay, and then we do that again. So notice that this is the second one, right? And let's try the third one. Which is this one, WXYZ 1 2 3 4. So we're going to run test again. So notice that it didn't return anything, even though there is a there is a uh, there is a record for the board, but it's not returned anything. And the reason is because this is an inner join. An inner join returns an intersection of the two tables, the kboard and the kcut. And if there is no intersection, if these two, based on this particular condition, right? So the intersection is based on this condition. If this condition is not met, then no information is no record is returned. Uh, Instead of now, so we can modify this a little bit by saying that instead of using an intersection, an inner join, we use a left join. A left join uh, allows you to return the data based on the left table. If you look at this particular query, right, we have got two tables, the kboard and the kcut. Okay, since kboard is specified first, we say it first. Think of this as the left hand side, and this is the right side. Okay, so we want to say uh, join, find this condition, execute this condition, but return all the record from the left table, even though this condition is not met. Let's look at this again. Notice that now we have got the now we are returning the information from the left table, but even though there is no information from the right table. Okay, this will work also if we change this to just back to our regular, uh, just back to our just back to a normal, not a normal, but any board with cut. Notice that this will work. Okay, so this is the query that we're going to use. Right, so here we're going to say const SQL we're going to have, since it's quite long, I'm going to use a multi-line. Right, and here, instead of using Fred, I'm going to say, I'm going to set a parameter. That's our, that'll be our query. Now, what we do is this: we just implement this query. Okay, like the one below. So we're going to, so this method is going to be almost identical to this, which is like this, cons, okay, await, this. So we're going to get pool, get connection, okay, and then we're going to go try catch any error, and then we're going to return the error, and then finally we're going to say con release. Okay, so basically this is what we're going to do. So if you notice that a lot of our query is going to be in this format, we will first of all get a connection, then we will perform the query. If there is any error, okay, we will throw an error, we'll reject the promise, and then we will release connection. So there's a lot of boilerplate code. This is the same. This part is going to be the same, or actually these two lines are going to be the same, right? We get a connection, and then the way we handle the error and the way we release the connection is going to be the same. The only thing that's going to be different is the query we perform. In fact, this is actually the same as well. The only thing that's going to be different is this row here, right? And also how we manage the data. What we're going to do is this. I will simplify this by writing a method that extract away all this boilerplate code, and we just focus on this. So what we do is this. We'll use something in JavaScript called closure. I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a method called makeQuery, okay, which will take a connection, an SQL statement, and a connection pool, and you return to us an object that is that will return to that will execute the query and return to us the result. So once it returns to us the result, then we can do anything with the result. Okay, this is what we do. We create a function called makeQuery. MakeQuery will take an SQL statement which is of type string, and you take a connection pool which is of type pool, like that. Okay, and then what it's going to return is it's going to return a function, an async function, which has one parameter, which is an array of anything, okay, and then it's going to return something. Okay, it's going to return a promise. Okay, it's going to return something. We do not know what we're going to return yet. Okay, so inside here, inside this method function, this is what we're going to do. We're going to just say cons await, and then we'll just go pool. So this pool here, this pool is this pool up here, get connection. Then we will do this, catch. If we got error, we will want to log it out. Then we will just say error, and then we will list out the SQL statement. List out the SQL statement, and then we'll just dump out the error, and then we'll go return, reject the error, and then finally we will release the connection. Oops. Finally, we'll release the connection. Okay, so this is a function that when we pass in some parameter, right, will get a connection, will perform something, and then if there's any error, you reject it, you dump out the error, reject it, and then you release the connection. So in here, so this part, all this part here is actually this. Okay, it's actually this part, and this part. Okay, so now all we need to do is just execute the query, which is what we're going to do here. Okay, right? So we will say return the result. Sorry, we will return let's say con query. We take the SQL and then we put a param. Okay, let's put params. So we're going to return something like this. Okay, so notice what is it going to return? So it's going to basically the promise. So since query is a promise, okay, it's going to return it's going to so this is going to return so this the return type for our function, the promise, is going to be whatever that the query returns. And what does a query return? So let's have a look. So on query, you notice that query returns a promise of this type, a packet, row packet data, an array, a row packet data, an array of array, an OK packet array, result set header, comma, field packet header. So what I'll do is I'll create a type for this, and then I'll stick it here. This is what I'll do. So let's call this make query result. Okay. So sorry, this is the type. Okay, so it's going to be like this: row data packet, one, and then row data packet. It's going to be like that, and then OK packet, and then OK packet. Okay, one of those, and let's see what is the other one. Okay, so result set, comma, field packet. Okay. So let me just put it here. Result set header from MySQL2, okay, and comma, what was that? Field packet. Okay. That's the data. That's it's going to return. So now here, we will just say it returns make query result type. Okay, so the way this is going to work is like this. I will create a function here. Let me call it here. Okay, so I'll create a function here. I'm going to call this, let's call this private. I'm going to call this get kboard. Okay, so, and then what happened is this. After we have successfully pinged the database, we know that the connection pool is valid. This is what we'll do. We will go this get kboard. Okay, make query. We'll pass in our get kboard and we'll pass in the pool. So this will return a function that has captured, or rather return a closure that has captured the SQL, our SQL and the pool, and return this function, right? So this function has captured the SQL and the pool. Okay, so all it needs now is just a parameter. Okay, and this is what we're going to do. So we don't need all this anymore, right? So all we need is this. We can do const result, okay, like this. This get kboard, and all we need to do is just pass in the user ID and board ID. Okay, so I know that this is going to return a row data packet, an array of row data packet, right? So what we'll do is this. We'll just say we'll destructure it by saying this. So the first result, the result actually goes to this variable result, and we don't really care about the field info, right? Okay. So let's also create a type for this. Okay, a type for this. So what is a type? So the type is basically a function that takes any parameter, that takes an array of whatever and returns a promise of this. So let's create a type. Let's call this make query function. Okay, make query function, and then we will say the it's a function type of param any, and it returns a promise of make query result. Okay. Now we can say the type for this is make query function type. Okay, so now we have hide all the boilerplate code inside this closure. We can actually simplify this. I will not do this here. I will leave it as exercise for you to do it yourself. Okay, so I'll just focus on this. So from now on, things are going to be very simple. Anytime we want a query, we'll just create one of these guys, one method, or sorry, one function. We'll just create the SQL statement. Okay, we just create the SQL statement, right? And then we pass in the pool, and then we'll get back returns a function. We can call it whatever we want. Okay, so now this is the result. We can now say we can now do this if the result, the length of the result. Okay, so if the result is less than 0, we want to return null. So less than 0 means that we have not found a board. So we have not found the board. Either the user ID doesn't exist or the board doesn't exist. Okay. Okay. So sorry, that's so converge. You type row packet data. Sufficient. Missing the following tab. Row packet data. I don't have row packet data in mind, so I saw an error. Row data packet. Okay, let me just get rid of this. Why is there an error here? The function. Oh, right. I didn't put await. That's why. Okay, right. Okay, so I didn't have await. That's why it was giving me an error. Okay, so I check that if the result is null, then we return null if we don't have anything. Now we will just get the data out. Okay, let's go up and get our field. These are the values that we want. Stick it here. Okay, so the first one is the board ID. So if you look at here, that's the board ID. Okay, so board ID. So we'll go result 0 board ID. Then the second one is a created on. This is the date. Created on. And so since it's the date, we're just going to do like this. Okay. Updated on. So this is an optional field. We might not have this, so we need to check if we actually have the data. If we have, then we'll convert it into a date. Say updated on. Okay, so if it exists, go new. Updated on. Otherwise, you just return a null. Oh, okay. Get time. So we want the time. And this one as well. Yep. Okay. So the title is going to be result 0 title created by. So created by is actually the created by is actually the use. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I don't have the data here. Okay, so let's use created by the user ID. Okay. Well, technically, it's not true because if you recall, the created by is actually our email. Okay. Well, you can actually perform another query to get that. But anyway, let's just go with this user ID here. And then finally, comments. Okay. and then this card. Oops. Right. So now what we want to do is this. Why is it here? Okay. So now what we want to do is this. We want to check if we have if we actually have any cards. And the way we're going to check if we have any cards is this. Okay. We're going to check if the card ID is null. Okay. So if it is not null, then we know that it has cards. The board has cards, and then we'll look through and we'll create the cards. So we'll say if record result 0 card ID. So if it's not null, then we will say kboard cards equal the result. We'll do that. Okay. Then we'll go return. So we'll say description and then priority. And finally, we can return our board. So that's the entire query, right? So we have abstract out, so it's very simple. We just focus on this. So let's run through. We perform a query. We check if we actually found anything. If we don't find anything, we return null. Otherwise, we will construct the we will take the data from the record, and then we will construct our board, and then we check if we have any card. If we have card, then we will just look through and return. We'll create a cards, attach a card to the field cards, and then we return the result. Board. Okay, let's check if there's an error. Okay, so now we are done with this. We will now go to add this into our controller. Add this into controller. What I'll do is this. I'm going to copy a few lines from here. And then also 4 lines. 5 lines actually. Okay. So now this guy here will return a kboard. For the time being, it's going to return a kboard. This is what we do. Let's go let result kboard. Okay, and then we'll say this try catch any error. Okay. So then we'll say this result is supposed to await this kboard. We'll get the kboard. We pass in the user ID and the board ID. So we get the result, right? If there is any error, we want to throw internal server error exception. Okay, maybe we want to console log. Like that. Okay. Right. So now we want to check if the result is null. If the result is null, we want to say not found. So we want to throw not exception. Okay. Board. Then we let's say the board ID not found. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just return the result. Let's try this out. Let's check if there's any error. Okay, so let's get started. So let's try this guy. So let's try this case. Let's try Fred. where we don't find any data. So we got not found. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's call it A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 4. Okay, and this one now should return to us our data. Notice that the board ID, the cards, our comments. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's try this. W, X, Y, Z. So notice that this one, the cards is now. So Fred is okay, the dates, okay. Except that notice that the board ID is now. Okay, the reason is because of this. Uh, if you go back to the result here, right, the SQL result, notice that there is actually two board ID. The first board ID is from the kboard, the second board ID is from the cards. And the reason why we're getting now is because the result, first of all, returns the returns kboard, right? And then it returns, and then it returns k card. Since k card, the board ID is null. Since because we don't have the board, this data overwrites this. So that's why we are getting null. So what we need to do is that we need to get this SQL statement to first of all return the k card before returning the board. So then we will preserve the, the board ID. Okay? So just make a small change. We don't need to change the code. We just need to change the sequence in which the data is returned, the result is returned. And to do that, you just say here, we want to return the C first, everything from C, and then we return everything from D. Okay. So now if we run this guy, you notice that we now have the board ID. Okay. Right. So one other thing, uh, one other thing as well. So remember we did the left join, right? Okay. So but if you go back to our schema, oh sorry, let me finish this one first, and then I'll fix another little problem. Okay. So now that we've got this kboard implemented, we will also create a standard response envelope for it by creating a response. Right. So you just say, let me just go. So instead of kboard's response, you just go kboard, and the data here will the data here is just go like that. So fairly simple. I'll just import this here. Okay. Now we will add our response. So that's our response, right? Okay. So we will say get kboard response. Okay. So now we will use that to construct the response. So let me just do this here. So we just say this as get kboard response here, right? And then we will just say the first one is a timestamp. Okay, the second is the status code. We'll just say 200. Okay, so we'll also put the status that we're going to return up here. There is actually so we can put like 200 here. There is actually an enum, enumerated type status. Just say okay. So this is 200. Okay. In fact, if you want to, we can also do this here. Okay. Right, and then finally, the last one that we need to return is the data. And we just say result. Okay. Finding kboard response. Okay. So let me just insert that in. Okay, so we are done. let's look at this. So we got our data, our response envelope. Let's look at this 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. Oops. Right, so that's our data, right? Okay, so we are done with that. Okay, so now I'm going to fix one little problem as well with the view. So let's look at the view from last episode's data. So notice that the view, we've created this view, right? So let's go and do this. Select all from kboard summary. Okay. Notice again that it's only returning 2 when we've got 3. When we have got three board, but it's only returning 2. It's the same reason because of the left join. Okay. So what I'll do is this. I will just copy this one out first, and then let me put it here. Oops. Okay, so let me just copy this guy again. Okay. Okay. So we want to say here, we want to say this on left join. Okay. So this is okay. We assume that the user always exists, right? And then we will do the left join here. So now if we do that and we now come back to here and we execute the test, okay, and we now run the kboard summary again, you now notice that we actually have the last one. Okay? But the calculation is wrong, the cut is wrong, and the reason is because we are counting the board ID. Okay? Because the board ID is always there, right? So instead of counting the board ID, what we'll do is that we'll count the cut ID. Okay, so how many cut ID do we have? So now let's execute this again. Okay, so now notice that if we count the cut ID, the result is still the same, but it makes a difference here, right? Okay, so this is 0. Okay, so we will modify. We'll take this, and then we will amend this here. Okay, we will delete this old one. Okay, so we do a left join, and then we count the cut ID. Okay, so everything is okay now. So we've got we have implemented this resource. Okay, right? So now finally, before we leave, we are going to write the API for this guy using the Open API spec for this guy. So here, okay, I'm going to just copy a few things from here. It's going to be roughly almost the same as the previous one. So instead of kboards, it's kboard, right? And then we're going to have the board ID, get board by for user get board. Sorry, we'll just do this get board, get kboard with board ID for user. Okay, and then the operation ID is we'll just say get kboards by user ID and board ID. So the parameter is the user ID. And then we need one more parameter, and this parameter is the board ID. Okay, we don't have any query query string. The response is going to be the same. Paste the response here. Okay. We have 200, which is success. The return schema is JSON. Okay, the schema type is not kboards but kboard response, which we are going to write. And then we also have a 400. 404. And currently we'll just say, for the time being, we'll just say it's going to return a text. The type is text plain. Okay, and the type is string. Okay, so we will just leave it at that first. We will come back and work with this in a little while. In future episodes when we actually create a uniform error. We will actually create a uniform error response for all our errors, just like we create a uniform uniform, just as we create a uniform response envelope for all our successes. Okay, so for the time being, we'll just say returns a string. So now we will write the schema for this kboard, this response, and then we'll just it's going to be the same as almost going to be the same as this. I'm just going to copy this guy, and this is the kboard response. It will have a timestamp. You have a status code. It doesn't have limit, offset, and the data. It's kboard. We have to write the schema for that. So the required fields are timestamp, status code. We don't have this field, and we don't have this field. Okay. Now we will write the schema for kboard, which is this. I'm just going to copy very easily. Okay. So what we'll do is this. I will copy the model, so at least we know what we are looking at. Okay, so let me just put that up here. Okay, so we will have the board ID. We will have the board ID. So the type is string. Okay, we will have the created on. Right, so the type is string. The format is date type, and then we have the updated on. Again, the the type is going to be the same. It's going to be a date type, and then we have title, which is of type string, and we have created by. Oops, created by. It's of type string. And then we have comments, type string again, and finally we have cards. Okay, the type here is array, and then the items will be a schema, which I'm going to use this to do like that. So this is going to be k card. Okay, and the required fields, right? So I can say meet items 0. Okay. But anyway, I mean it's intuitive, right? Because you cannot have a negative number of items in an array. Okay. Uh, Now we will say what are the required fields. So the required fields are the board ID, which I have, the created on. Sorry. So I have the board ID. I have the create. So I don't have created on. Created on, and then I don't need the updated on. I have the title. I've created by. I don't need comments. Comments is optional, and then I need cards. Okay, so let's check again. Board ID, we need a board ID. So board ID is mandatory. Created on, that's mandatory. Updated on, this is optional. Title, created by. Comments, which is not here, which is good. Cards, and then we've got cards. So now finally, one last one, which we need is cards. We need this thing. Yeah. Okay. So card. So the properties is description, type string, and then priority. Type is integer. Minimum is 0. Maximum. Remember, we only got three priorities, right? Maximum is 2. I've also noticed that I've actually made a mistake from the get response. Sorry, get kboard response. So let's have a look. Okay, so get kboard response should actually return the data should actually be an array. Okay, so the type here should be array, and then the items is that. So that's our SQL that's our uh, Open API spec. Okay, so let's test this thing out. Let's drop this here. You import. Oops, doesn't the URI doesn't contain a valid specification. Let's have a look. The URI doesn't contain, so it's probably one of these keyboard components. Got component schemas. Okay, so let's get keyboard. Okay, so let me just pause this first, and then once I find the problem, I'll resume it again. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I found the mistake. Here I've got two keyboard summary. Okay, so here this thing keyboard, the response references keyboard, but there's actually no keyboard. So it's here. So I should remove this guy. Okay, so let's try importing this again. Okay, so we're going to put it into a new workspace. Okay, so let's have a look to see if we have any error. Okay, so we don't have any error. So now we can test our our API. Notice that we have the schema, summary, kcard, kboard, and the two responses. Uh, Again, here you get more information here, and we will now test our kboard, the second one, the second method. I will try it out. Okay, so we will say Barney, Fred, which this is really bad because you know the font color is gray. You should make it black. ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, hope you can see. So we execute this, we get this result. See that? And if we now like just put somebody's, let's put Wilma, we should get a 4 for not found. Okay, so I will end this episode here. Um, in the next episode, what we will do is this: we will do an insert or a post, and that involves performing a transaction. So we look at how we perform a transaction, to have that consistency. So one of the main selling point for relational database is this asset thing, right? Okay, so we're going to look at that. So until next time, stay safe. This code will be checked into the yeah, into the part 21 branch. Okay, and you can find the link in you can find the repository in the link below. Okay, so see you all.